Okay, requesting that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off, or the meeting condition as not to
New
disturb
rule.
the meeting which I'm about to call. Any member of the public also has the right to make an audio video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. Once again, Mr. White has joined us in our predetermined position. Good evening. We will start calling. That's good. Where did Mr. Good evening, Mr. Foster. Good evening, Mr.
Good evening.
Good evening. We'll wait for Mr. No, you wouldn't mind if I could wait for Mr. Trudeau.
True.
Phone call, Mr. Brock, Mr. Gray, Mr. myself, and Mr. Paulson. Citizens' participation. Oh, go ahead, please. Jeffrey, you're going to make room for citizens' participation.
I will gladly do that. This gentleman? You want to address it?
We don't know you, but identify yourself.
All right.
Please.
Dave Walton, District 3. Last night at the Selectmen's meeting, later on in the meeting, a topic was brought up, and obviously you can't make any comments, you just sit quietly and listen. And this is in reference to the new police substation in Onset. And while I ask these questions, I am all for it. I think it's fine, so it's not an anti-comment. But what I don't like is that it was basically done so quietly as far as the public is concerned. I don't know if anybody here knew all along that this was going on, but as far as everybody I talked to had no idea this was happening. And things that were never brought up at town meeting, which we just finished, were things like that A, it was happening, B, how it was going to be financed. There's nothing still to this day more than gossip going around town guessing as to where the money is coming from. A comment was made last night by the chief saying that it's not taxpayers' money, which is fine, but still it doesn't explain. If as gossip has it, the source, I ask, this is a finance group, is there a ledger keeping track of all of these incoming funds, and when they're outgoing, where they're going? Is there a record of the balance of these funds? Even if there was enough, why wasn't this used to pay the $19,000 for the pickup truck that the taxpayers paid for with an elaborate whistles and horns and radios and what have you for $4,500? These are things that I think people should know. I think they should know where the monies are. If they are there and they're spent for the good, beautiful. I was told, again, part of gossip, that that type of fund cannot be used for salary. If that's the case, then I'd like to know for people who prepared this substation, were they paid? Was it 100% volunteer, so that the money was only spent on material and everybody else gave of their time and effort? If it was that way, excellent. And I don't expect anybody to have answers for this, but that's just an open forum for me to say. I don't think it was handled the proper way, although what the result was is fine, but it really should be a little, especially when we are desperate for money and so poor, which you all know that. we have to have records of the funds, I really believe is the right way to do it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, go to the town administrator's report. First item on the agenda is the town accountant. How are we doing with BMAG? How are we doing on our hire?
The new town accountant has been hired. His name is Brian Howard Kudish. He's an attorney and a CPA. He started, I believe it was Friday the 18th. He's been in the office. He has already gone through some VADAR training. He was in on 8 hours of training today. For the next 3 Mondays, he'll be attending training on UMass accounting, off-site with his staff. He's just been there for a week or so, so he seems to be working out fine thus far.
How are we doing with BMAG now? There has to be a transition period.
BMAG is on contract, or has a contract with the town through June 30th of this year.
Is Mr. Kudish meeting with BMAG at all? Or?
We have a conference call scheduled for Friday. This past week, Justin Cole, who's the primary from BMAG, has had family issues. He has been meeting with, over the phone. They've had conversations since Mr. Kudish started, but he has not been on site, as far as I'm aware.
Anyone else have any questions?
Well,
Mr. Brown?
thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I guess my question is, the new accountant and the old accountant, according to the draft report, had a lot of work that they really need to work together on. And I was concerned if that's going to get done before Justin Cole leaves.
They have a checklist of items that they have to address prior to the close of the fiscal year. There are a lot of things that have already been managed. The two largest things were the reconciliation of the cash and the receivables. There are different reconciliations that have to be done between the departments. Mr. Kudish obviously will be here 5 days a week. Mr. Cole was here 1 day a week. A lot of that was communications back and forth between the departments, and that is something that will be Mr. Kudish's responsibility from this day forward, or from the day he was hired forward. He's actually the town accountant for the town of Wareham, and he has put together a list already. They have been working on those, and I've been getting CC'd on the emails back and forth, and I think we'll be okay for the close of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Mr. Gray?
John, are you, from your observation, are you satisfied that there's enough discussion between the two, the old and the new accountant, and that by the end of the time, in other words, June 30th, that all information necessary will have been transferred?
Yes, there's been a lot of discussion. A lot of it has been electronic. They are going to have to meet, and we have set up meetings with myself, the old town accountant, different department heads, depending on what issues we had. Mr. Kudish obviously needs to be involved in this as well, and it's going to have to be done by June 30th. There's no option one way or the other.
During the course of the actual year-end close, will there be any need for BMAG to consult with Mr. Kudish?
If I would have set it up originally, if I would have continued it on until the close of the fiscal year. Obviously, you have a new person coming in, and fiscal year, although it ends June 30th, which is when his contract ends, doesn't end until August, really, when you close your books. So that will be up to Mr. Kudish. There are no additional funds, and it has not been budgeted in the 2013 budget. So that will be, from July 1st on, that will be Mr. Kudish and his assistant in the office to handle.
So that they will, BMAG will not be accessible.
July 1st, he will not be
He's on
under
his-
contract.
He's on his own,
Yes.
right? Revenue expenses year-to-date April, could we see what that is?
Yes, you should have 3 forms on the desk in front of you. This one is, I cut off the heading on it while trying to expand it so that it would be somewhat visible without a magnifying glass. You'll see that the categories that we have on here are what the collections are, what's actually in the budget, what the collections are, and what's outstanding. That's for the revenues. And then if you simply go down to the bottom, you'd see the similar for the expenditures. Vadar, by using that's our accounting software system. So that's it. They're saying that's what's in our Vadar system. So you'd see what's in our Vadar system, the expenditures, any purchase order liabilities, and then what's still available on there. You also see the benchmark for April 30th, 2012 would be 83.33%, and you will also be given the percentage on there. This is not the format that you've been used to getting it in. I did receive this today, and I didn't have enough time to put it into your normal format, so I figured you'd prefer to have something rather than waiting for a formatting issue.
If I may, Vadar is the budget.
Yes, so that would be so if you looked at what was the way the budget was eventually set up on there. So that's the way to read it. And obviously in the left-hand column will give you what the categories are. They are not broken out in salary or expenditures.
Any questions? Mr. Paulson?
One of the big items is medical, and I see if I understand this correctly, I see 4 million and change, 4.1 million, and then a 0% next to it. I'd like to get some sense as to where we stand with regard to medical, if we're ahead, behind.
I believe that's one of the further agenda items on there, unless you want me to cover it.
We can cover it now.
Okay. The 4.19 million was transferred over, my understanding from the town accountant, as of yesterday into the healthcare trust fund. So that should read 0. We moved it over as a lump sum. We, as you know, had the healthcare holiday. Let's see. I'm going to give you the rough estimates on there because either I handed out my personal sheet to one of you or I left it on my desk. One of you either got an Easter gift or not. The healthcare holiday altogether cost approximately $1.2 million. $900,000 on the town side, $300,000 on the employee side. You would see we had originally budgeted that we would need a higher amount for that or a greater holiday on there. However, we do receive outside revenues that we were not considering when doing the budget, such as we are reimbursed from grants, the school grants, the GATRA COA grants, and the CETA grants as well. So while we pay out to cover the 75% of that, we are then reimbursed. We also receive money such as through the drug subsidy program. We also receive monies from the ERRP, the Early Retirement Reimbursement Program. When there is the COBRA employments monies go into this. So roughly, I believe it was approximately $300,000 that we had received in and additional revenues on there. There's also the stop loss insurance. So if one person goes over their amount, our stop loss kicks in, I believe, at the $50,000 amount. And again, on top of that would be the run rate as well, which I believe is still at approximately 90%.
Just to continue just for a moment more, is the so-called holiday finished now? Are we done with it?
Correct. It was for a total of 8 weeks for the town and the employees, and it has run its course.
Okay, thank you.
In addition, Mr. Kudish has also been asked, once he gets settled, to calculate the actual split, to go back and review, since the last auditors left us a couple of years ago with those numbers. I don't know if you remember, there was a variance in the shift, the 25-75 split. I've asked him to go back and review that, and also to recategorize the way we handle the percentages and the billing, to actually break them up so at any one point in time we will know how much is employee and how much is in the fund from employer. Right now they're commingled, which you have to go back and run calculations to figure out what the split is, but I've asked him to look at it as two different funds, and we'll pay the bills 75-25 from those funds.
Do we have an estimate of the what the year-end balance of the trust will be?
Yes, the year-end balance is approximately, I believe that will end up being approximately 1.4 million, if I'm remembering correctly. So with our IBNR at roughly $500,000, if we deduct that, we have a $900,000 balance in there. Is if that's the way everything has run its course. $900,000 is something we should probably start building back up again. At our holiday, we'll need to build the fund back up.
900 represents how much of a reserve?
Under 2 months reserve. So even though you have the IBNR, that would be under 2 months reserve, which is not ideal, I would say.
Just again pursuing this one step further. We have a liability on the GASB 45, which I've talked about probably too much, of $87 million, and it keeps going up year by year by $1 to $2 million. I'm curious what the administration is doing in regard to that.
What we should do is open the fund, depending on what we have available to place in that fund. It should be established anyway, to have an OPEB fund, trust fund. So at least it can be noted on our audit that we've established a fund and we're working toward the goal of paying that off. However, I don't know what we have available to place in that fund. That's something that should be discussed in the very near future.
Any questions? Tom?
I have a question. Going back, you were saying that we have 2 months on the medical?
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, a little less than 2 months on there, approximately $900,000.
And you were saying that you don't feel that that's adequate. What do you feel is adequate?
Oh,
Or what would you like to see? How's that? What would you feel comfortable with?
if I went by my father's adage for our mortgage, it would be 6 months. But I don't think that's.
They recommend 2 to 3 months.
Yeah.
So that's the recommendation too, so we're a little bit light.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Not outrageously
Again,
light,
we just
a little
took,
bit light.
yeah, we took the holiday out of there, so obviously the best thing that'd be able to happen is if we could build that back up.
Right, well, we want to have it at a comfortable place, so you say 2 to 3, and we're a little under 2, so we still have a little way to go. Okay, thank you.
That's my
Questions?
projections.
Just on to one other item here. Derek, what's up with the municipal maintenance at 109?
Yeah, municipal maintenance, if you remember, we originally had $62,000 transfer for them as sort of a holding pattern until the FEMA money was coming in. The first round of FEMA money came in and there will be a second round on there. I believe municipal maintenance only received approximately 20,000 out of the first round. The second round should be roughly 135,000. I have not received the actual breakdown of what it's been. The only thing I've been told is it should almost all be going to municipal maintenance, but I can't say whether that's right or not. And that would start bringing them within line.
Any questions? Mr. Gray?
I know we've discussed this before, but I can't remember what the answer is. Snow and ice, apparently we're over budget on this.
Yeah, that's one of our legal deficits there. The one thing to keep in mind is what one storm costs us. We had one large storm, I believe that, I don't know if it was the October storm or where we received approximately 10 to 12 inches of snow that lasted approximately 48 hours.
Yep.
That cost us $90,000 to $98,000. Now, you have to remember some of the other nights when it's icy and such, you do need to put the trucks out there for the sand and salt, which costs us money. Would we all have? It's amazing that on what's considered a light year or a very light year that we're still, $1,000 over budget.
I'm candidly shocked at that because if we're over budget in the winter we've just had, if we had any sort of winter, we would have been way over. That certainly says something is crazy for the budget process.
Mr. Chairman, can I just respond to that? That's the one, we've been constantly getting it increased somewhat, but like he said, that's one of the funds that they can legally have a deficit and be able to do it, so they purposely do that in municipal finance only.
One of the issues is if we had budgeted, let's say, at $500,000 for this year, it's coming to the end of the year. We've got issues in other budgets. You can't transfer that money out of there.
That's what it is.
That was the
Yeah.
thing that I forgot.
That's the little
I knew there
caveat.
was something in there and I couldn't remember what it was. Thank you.
Mr.
Boy,
McDonald?
I get to ask a question, just come in the door. You got a thing in here called PO liability. That's everything's accounted for, that's not, basically, that's an accrued amount, or those are POs that have not been paid or entered into the system, correct?
Purchase order, yeah.
So that's everything, there's nothing laying on someone's desk.
No, that is incorrect. There could be something laying on somebody's
So
desk.
what we're looking at is everything that's entered into the system and everything that you know of. But has anybody gone back to any of the department heads and say, what else have you got in here that's not entered in the system? Has that been done?
We had a department head meeting several weeks ago when I started, and I asked for any outstanding bills to be brought forward, which bills were brought forward at that time. And they were also ordered to cease all non-essential spending at that time. So there shouldn't be any surprises, let's put it that way.
But we don't know for sure, we're just hoping, I mean, that's,
Well,
that was the
there are a lot of
direct.
bills left to be paid. I can tell you my office in May and June, quite a bit of my budget is spent on tax title, advertisements, the actual recording of the tax titles, which is thousands of dollars. I'm one of the budgets in May and June that you'll see those line items, land court, tax title, advertising fees, they all get spent in those months. It's pretty much nothing prior to that. They're all spent in May and June. So there are other departments like that.
And there's an effort underway to make sure everything, there's a drop dead date of like, what, after June?
It's actually in the next,
Oh, well then I'll just hush until the next one then. How about that?
Mrs. Brown, did you have a question?
No, well, I did, but I'll wait until we get to the Powers and Sullivan draft, because I guess, well, actually, Mr. Chairman, my question was, it seemed that a lot of department heads weren't responding to requests. Do you find that they're responding better to your requests, or you and Derek's request? Because
Well, there were issues. Some department heads that I'm aware of didn't want to sign off on some of the documents. Some of the information hadn't been entered or was not matching up with what they had. Some of the beginning balances weren't brought forward. But everybody has been informed that they need to go over their budgets, and they have been. I've met with a lot of department heads in the past several weeks, and they have brought their concerns forward. There were some department heads that believed that transfers were being made for them that had never hit their budgets. They were a little concerned with signing off on something that had been promised to them and never had occurred. So you might have a few that are mixed in like that.
okay.
Any other questions?
Call me silly, but on the last page is appropriation deficits. Is that what this letter is about there? What is that amount?
That would be an appropriation deficit.
Okay, what else is not included here, because my math doesn't match this now.
That's actually not going to be calculated into free cash. That item that you have, that letter you just held up
Yeah.
there, there was an issue apparently back when the tax rate was set, and Mr. Sullivan can go into it, where there were several votes on articles. One was set up by article, and the other one was a complete budget vote. When the budget was voted, Article number 6, that amount included $242,000 for legal settlements, and then that was referred to in that budget as $242,000 for article for legal settlements. There was no article for legal settlement. All the other articles had a separate article that referred to that. That one didn't.
Yeah, I think if I may continue on to that, in front of this board, in front of the Board of Selectmen, when I had been speaking about the budgets, I had talked about transfers going into the police that need to be transferred out for settlement. I also spoke about the legal lines for the $42,500 that had been in there and been transferred out. The belief was that, and you will see that the budget we voted on in 2013 had it listed in there as FY12, again for the reserve for collective bargaining / settlements, $242,065. When the tax rate was being set, the DOR went over it, and as John was saying, we had basically double appropriated the budget, voted the budget as a whole once. And then if you had your budget on page 4 of this, you would see other budget articles. They were voted separately, all of them except for the reserve for collective bargaining settlements. When the warrant was written, for whatever reason, that was not given its own budget article. In setting the tax rate, the DOR disallowed that. Said because it did not have its own, while working to get rid of the double appropriations, they were going to disallow that. In May, when we were coming together trying to figure out the year end, and we're speaking about the transfers, it's discovered that 242 is not available to spend out of. So we have a deficit there. Immediately, and if you read the letter, BMAG contacted the Department of Revenue. The reason they did this is that there are certain legal deficits, much like snow and ice. If you read through here, and maybe I'll just read part of the letter if that
If
won't.
you would, because I think it helps to understand the problem.
The Department of Revenue allows for cities and towns to legally overexpend an appropriation that has been earmarked for the payment of legal settlements against a municipality. The Department of Revenue views these items as deficits that are outside the control of the town, much like snow and ice over expenditures. Unlike snow and ice, there's no legal requirement to set aside funds for the payment of settlements, nor would it be financially prudent to do so in a normal year. We did think that we had done that, again, through the budget articles, thought that we'd set aside $242,000. If city or town is not able or does not wish to handle the appropriation of funds through the normal town meeting process, Chapter 44, Section 31 of Massachusetts General Law allows for a legal deficit to be raised on the balance sheet, which will not impact free cash and will be funded through the subsequent recapitulation without town meeting action. Now, you make a request for the Department of Revenue to utilize that MGL. The Director of Accounts, prior to the payment by the treasurer, from the executive authority of the municipality, must make a request in writing to the Department of Revenue. That's what's been requested by the Board of Selectmen. Without the prior approval, payment of these items represent an illegal over-expenditure of the town meeting appropriation and needs to be fully funded through the town meeting process before the conclusion of the fiscal year. If the illegal deficit is not fully funded, the town will receive a penalty of a 1-to-1 reduction in free cash at the conclusion of the fiscal year, in addition to a mandatory funding through the recap process for the next tax rate. In other words, if we don't send out this letter, we will be hit doubly on this. And that's the problem, the real issue that we need to get at right now. Because if it's $242,000, our free cash will be reduced by $242,000, and then through the recap process, we'll be hit for $242,000 as well. If we are able to do this through the Department of Revenue and the Director of Accounts signs off on it, we would be able to, through the fall town meeting, whether we want to pay it through free cash, if there's enough available, we would be able to pay down that amount. If we're not, our free cash will be reduced anyways, and we'll be hit on the recap process.
Then on the recap, we'll have to reduce our expenditures for our appropriations, basically.
Correct.
So we'll be looking at adjustments in the fall,
Unless your receipts go up.
unless receipts go up. Right, but when we know that by October.
25 last
We'll
time.
know the expenditures before we'll know the potential for receipts to go up, collections to go up.
Okay, so this is kind of time sensitive, it sounds like to me too as well.
Before June 30th.
That would be my next question, and you've already answered the fallout if we don't do it. It really doesn't matter who's to blame or why it happened. I guess at this point, it's just something we need to do, or we're going to end up getting hit double for the process. So, is that in action? Is putting the action at this point? Are we relatively sure we'll have the letter in their hands by the 30th?
It requires the Board of Selectmen to sign off on it.
It's been explained to them.
And meeting on it next Tuesday night, and it's the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and myself that would need to sign off on it.
Okay.
Is that done by vote of the board, or is it?
They discussed it last night, and it was determined that their board would vote on whether or not the chairman would sign it. So they're going to look into this further, spend some time on it this week, and the chairman's going to get back to his board next Tuesday night.
Okay. It seems to me that what I'm hearing is if we do the letter, we have free cash, we're covered. If we do it, we don't have free cash, we have the same problem as if we don't sign the letter, but then there's an additional problem if we start out on the whole 250 on the revenue side. Leave enough free cash available for next year.
This is probably not a question for here, but why on earth would they not sign it in?
That's out of order. Thank you.
All right, just wanted to get it out.
That's out of order. Mrs. Spitoli?
I could get back to my main question. When I'm reading on your report here, appropriation deficit. Yeah,
It's
I got
there.
265,566, so what else is not in there?
Yeah.
This is, I can.
Just curious.
Ms. Catula. I received this roughly 2 hours ago and prepared for all of this. I can imagine there's probably $1,000 from snow and ice as we're talking on there, but I can get a breakdown for it
Okay.
and send it.
Just curious whether it was under $15,000 with what else might be hanging over our head, that was all.
Any other questions to vehicles? But I said we can wait for a second. I would like to we'll come back to the year-end closing schedule. I'd like to jump to D, which is the projected year-end revenues and expenditures. It's the other schedule that you're prepared for us. It might be, if you look at your April, and that's a couple of departments, it seems to be running a little high. So let's see how we come out at year-end.
Yeah, if you see the document titled General Government Salary and Expenses through 4/30/2012 with the year-end estimates, the key point on this is this was really preparing, concentrating on our general government, so our salaries and expenditures out of there. These are purely estimates. What I've done is I've prepared what our weekly salary is through payroll, then gone through how many weeks we have left through the end of the year from April 30th through the end of the year, and taken what their remaining salary is, and then at the end you simply have a surplus or a deficit on there. I've also taken their expenses. If you look at the 430 report, you'll see that many of these have higher expenses available listed when either speaking with the department or realizing what they have for year-end expenditures coming up. Many of them are reduced down to zero for a worst-case scenario on there. So you would see at the end, you would have the salary and the expenses remaining budget, and it's as of, so that would actually reflect through the end of the year. Now, is that there's a number of 435,000 there?
Yeah.
It's, you know, I would love if that's the true number, but this is just with all the estimates. If there's nothing else out there that I don't know about, if there's nothing being hit on there, this is, you know, realistically to tell you, I did put within here the town meeting transfers. Those haven't been entered into Vadar. So what you have is a document that took Vadar numbers and then took whatever calculations I had seen and what, you know, just from understanding what's happening at the year end of some of these departments, and gave the best estimate that I could at this time.
Under the police, you say it's reflecting settlement money, sick leave taken out. Does that mean that's not in these numbers?
Correct. So they would have been credited back that money. So if they're not in there, now the sick leave is a wash, because you'll see on the sick leave that I reduced the sick leave by the same amount that I credited to the police. However, that settlement money, now if that letter doesn't go out, essentially reduce the 435 by that amount. So you'd be talking about 207,000, what happened, 42.5.
So that's not been paid at this point.
Those have been. Mine doesn't reflect those payments on there. They have been paid in the lines as we know there. But when I originally was creating this wasn't wasn't an issue on there. So I've left it as that for my best calculation, and you can simply reduce it by that amount to get it sort of an extra worst case scenario.
Municipal maintenance, 109 estimated deficit. Cost, what's that?
They've not received their
FEMA money.
FEMA
So it's not
reimbursement
included
yet.
in them.
Is there any possibility we'll receive that FEMA money by the year end?
We were told that within 1 week of receiving the other check, we would receive the next round. It's been 1 week, we have not received the next one. I've asked Lieutenant Walczak, who's been a great help on this, has been working to please follow up and beg and plead to get that money.
Mr. Chairman, what happens if we don't receive it?
If we don't receive it, we'll have a deficit.
How much again?
of roughly what you'd be looking at here.
Right. Which is how much again?
Approximately 109,000 on the salary.
Do we have any, just to pursue this just one more, do we have any way of independently determining whether or not these FEMA checks do in fact go out to other entities about a week apart, or are we just taking somebody's, I won't say word for it, but somebody's assertion that that's the way it's gonna be?
We're taking what they told us.
Do we have any way of independently checking?
I could call to other communities and see when they've received their FEMA checks.
Thank you.
FEMA must be aware of the fiscal year end, so.
Correct. They know that June 30th we're essentially closing down, and we have 15 days thereafter to make any transfers and such actions.
Okay, do we have any contact with them in the next couple of weeks to find out what kinds of grounds they want today?
Yeah, we've had Lieutenant Walchuk on there calling them.
Okay.
No.
Anyone, any other questions?
Scratching my palm.
Well, that scares me.
Alright, so it looks like we're not facing deficits unless we have problems with the 252.
I would not, if you had to take this for the estimates that they are, there could be, like you've asked if there's any outstanding bills on somebody's desk that I don't know about and such. I know I'm giving you an uncertain answer on that. These are my best projections at this time.
I think one of our greatest concerns continues to be MIS. Do we have all the billings associated with the system?
That's a big one.
Represented in there is a, I believe, 49,000 or so still left to be paid. There was a surplus. If you look at the 430, the budget, the revenue and expenditure handout, you'll see that there was a surplus in that budget. I've zeroed that out as a worst case scenario there. So if could there potentially be another $49,000 that we could potentially have to pay out? Yes, there is, but
Do we have any idea what the possibility is that we will have to pay that out? What's the status of that bill, in other words? I don't, John, do you have any idea what the status of that is, or is it too soon to say?
It's too soon to say. I have made phone calls to an outside state agency to see if we were obliged to pay that, and they would give me no advice.
Okay. The next step would be to consult with our counsel, or?
Legal counsel.
Any case, okay. Any other questions? Anyone?
Anything less depressing?
stopped raining.
Anything else we should know?
Thank you.
We go back to the agenda, go back to item D, which would be, C, which would be year-end closing schedule, and procedures to meet the DOR requirements, because I understand we have a letter that says we must comply with a certain date or our state aid.
Well, there's two different issues there. The year-end closing schedule is actually for the departments.
Yeah.
Is what I'm handing out right now.
One impacts the other, that's why I put them together.
This is from Mr. Kudish to all the departments. It's something that we issue every year around this time regarding the cutoff dates for warrants and encumbrance dates, and also if any departments require transfers that come before your board and the Board of Selectmen. These are the forms that they need to fill out and get back to him by the certain dates, and they're all indicated in these sheets. There's multiple copies to pass.
I think I already had one. Double through.
Oh.
Go ahead. Are these the same transfers last year where we discovered that there's a dollar limit on them?
Yes.
Okay.
And we also had the problem last year that there was some confusion with the department heads on how to fill these out. And we hope that these will be a little closer this year.
Well, we have
Actually,
somebody,
the police department put them in reverse,
Yeah.
right? And it caused lots of confusion, so we hope that they would be, Mr. Curtis would sit down with you.
well, yeah, he is here 5 days a week, so he and his assistant are both here 5 days a week, so they have somebody to sit down and discuss this with.
Okay. Schedule and procedures for meeting the DOI requirement. I believe we received a letter that said that we had to have the schedule A's, et cetera, to them by a certain time. Will impact us. Tax rate, I think they said.
Yes, we've had that the past several years, where they've required a Schedule A for certified free cash, things that typically not asked of other communities. We've been asked to do that over the past at least 2 years, probably 3. And that's something that would, the big issue last year, obviously, also we had did we have the town accountant at that time? I can't even remember.
As of,
No.
April.
That's not something that should be a significant issue this year. Cash is being reconciled, cash and receivables both being reconciled. That's a big part of the close of the fiscal year. I don't see that being an issue. Cash should be closed, or the books should be closed sometime in August, I would say. And this needs to get done prior to town meeting. And the recap, when you refer to the tax rate, that means it has to be done by November. Or December is when the tax rate actually gets set. So if it relates to the tax rate, it'll be in December. But they will not allow the town to have a tax rate. From what I understand, from what I've seen, the town will not be allowed to have a tax rate without certified free cash. You get your certified free cash by submitting your Schedule A and your balance sheets.
All right, it's also my understanding from the letter that we also had to have a completed audit. Will that in fact happen? When is Powers and Sullivan scheduled to come in?
The last I heard, they were scheduled in November, the beginning of November.
I thought we had to have everything had to be done sooner than that.
That's what I learned the last time they were in here, that it was scheduled for November.
That's really late.
Yeah, that's like.
That's late for a typical community.
Seems like, yeah.
But in the past few years, they've been in almost in the next fiscal year. It's almost like the year's almost over before they're starting and completing their audits. So I'll speak with, I have a phone call in with Craig Peacock, who's our rep. He comes out, he's in charge of the group of people that work for Powers and Sullivan here. And I will see if he can set that for something closer to or prior to our town meeting in the fall. I think it's more or less of how they schedule their clients. They realize the town of Wareham is usually not ready. We're pretty close to town meeting, or after town meeting, so they've penciled us in for the beginning of November. I think it was November 4th, if I'm not mistaken.
I guess my concern, John, is that we received a letter from the Department of Revenue, which basically said that everything had to be wrapped up by the end of October. All right, including, and they had to be audited statements. Now, it's pretty hard to have an audited statement if the auditor isn't even going to be here until November.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, that's where we're expressing our concern.
Right.
And I think I am expressing it for the committee, saying, wait a minute, we have a letter that says we have to meet certain conditions, and then we're hearing that the audit isn't, we were told at one point that the audit would probably start in mid-September.
Exactly.
That's the question that came up. All right, that we would be fully closed and ready for audit in September, which means that we would make the date completely. All right, obviously we're concerned because the letter was pretty threatening.
Right.
Can we confirm?
Yes, I said I would call Mr.
Mr. Powers, what's going on, what's happening here? We're meeting next week.
When you
We're meeting next week, will we have an answer by next week on that? 'Cause
when
it's
you met
critical.
with Mr. Powers, you said you met with Mr. Powers?
No, we didn't meet with Mr. Powers, It was basically when Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Andrews
When we
specifically,
received the letter, he specifically stated that the audit would be completed on time to meet the
Right.
conditions.
My question, my follow-up question was going to be, is he aware of that?
Is Mr. Powers aware of it?
Yes.
I have no idea, because I was there when the calls were made or whatever.
if he's,
If he's not, he should be made aware of the letter, and internally, we should be aware that we're gonna have to be completed probably by mid-September at the latest, and he's gonna have to come in earlier.
I'll take care of it.
That's what I'm saying, would it be possible for you to let us know? We only meet one more time in June, that's next week. I'd appreciate it if you could let us know by then, if you've been able to contact Mr. Powers and what he sees the resolution to be. This is the end, I mean, we're right at year end, and whatever, we're gonna make those dates. That close is gonna have to happen fairly quickly. Mrs. Brown?
it would appear to me that if Mr. Powers isn't aware of this, that we were grin so-and-so. We were just told something here that we would have, and we're not gonna get it.
I don't know what was discussed, I'm just relaying what I've heard, and what I can speak, I can speak to Craig Peacock, he's calling tomorrow, and I can have him, have Mr. Powers give me a call. They're decent people to deal with, it's a matter of whether or not they've scheduled time for us.
Yes.
That's the issue right now, so, and they are very, obviously, they've put a lot of time in this town, they've made a lot of money off the town. So, I'm sure that we're one of their priorities, making sure this is getting done right. I'm sure they'll be willing to work with us.
How stringent is the letter? We've read the letter.
Can't set a
Will
tax
they
rate.
enforce the letter as written, or is somebody has said this was like a form letter, other people have said, no, it's not.
It's like a form letter, but I would enforce it. How many times do we need to get the same letter?
Well, getting the letter is one thing, getting the penalty is something different.
No, I can see that
What's
happening.
happened.
I could see that happen.
Anyone else have any questions? The Powers and Sullivan mid-year audit. Stand on that.
All we have is a draft, and
Oh, yes, we do, yeah.
the final, it's actually, the title of this is the Town of Wareham 6-month operational review. It's not an actual audit. We didn't audit every account and go through the same process they would for a year-end audit. The summary of this is that cash and receivables have been reconciled through this audit. They've mentioned through December 31st because that was the date of the audit, but they've also mentioned the next 2 months, January and February, had been reviewed, and there were no variances as of February. There were issues regarding reconciliations between the accountant's office and individual departments that were being worked on. I can tell you a lot of the items that are in the draft have already been worked on or worked out. And the BMAG, Justin Cole, is going to be meeting with Craig Peacock, who is actually the person who drafted this 6-month operational review, to give him more detail on certain items that were mentioned in this draft that have already been resolved.
All right, when do we anticipate a final?
I've told him that I'm all set from my side. I have no comments on it. I think he's working with Mr. Cole right now on this to finalize it.
So by the end of the month, or,
I would, yeah, definitely by the end of the month. I was hoping sooner than that.
okay. Mr. McDonald?
When I read through the whatever it is, audit, mid-year report, one of the things that struck me, and again, I think it's great that we made all this progress, but the communication was reinforced a few times in there, and is more than once or twice. Is that something that has also been resolved?
Yeah, there's a new town accountant in place that's full-time now.
Okay, so, but I guess that's my point, well, that's going to resolve the issue as well.
Yes, that shouldn't, although everything was reconciled, the concern was that not everyone didn't know what was going on while this was happening. A lot of it was happening off-site. Although things were being worked out, people weren't aware of the progress or what was happening during the cycle.
Okay.
Yes, that is something that in a normal year, reconciliations are performed between the treasurer and the accountant and the departments and the accountant, and everybody knows where they stand.
Right.
I think when they started asking everyone, are you all set? Are you reconciled? You know, the numbers came back correct,
Right.
but people weren't sure where they stood.
Okay, now going forward, we'll be doing monthlies, correct?
We always, well, we have.
I mean,
Um,
completed monthlies.
Yeah.
Completed monthlies, what I had
They
suggested,
don't just inquiries, but I mean, actually trying to
yes,
settle it every
this is
month.
something that you typically wouldn't have to do. What I have suggested, however, is that there be a sign-off sheet, for our office anyway.
Mhm.
We turn these over monthly, we reconcile to the bank, and then the accountant to us. So we're gonna have a sign-off sheet, which will be turned into the town administrator, at least for the, for the next several months anyway. Until the new administrator comes in, he can decide whatever he wants to do. Just so everybody knows they're being reconciled. The departments should also sign off on a reconciliation, at least quarterly for the departments. Us monthly, cash, receivables monthly. We also do receivables quarterly. Cash semi-annually also, and quarterly for the state. So there are a lot of things that you can do to make sure it's happening, that you can follow up on, and they're not. It's a matter of adding 2 lines on the bottom of a sheet, or adding, in my circumstance, I have all the different bank accounts with bank totals, and the deposits, the withdrawals, the transfers, all on a spreadsheet. All I need to do is add the accountant's column with the total, and we both sign off on the bottom of the spreadsheet, and then send that on to administration.
Mr. Paulson?
I turned back the clock on perhaps 2 years, sitting in the school department one day. Their accounting, we have a school department that's about $30 million a year, and we have a town that's about $30 million a year, give or take. About equally sized, both big. And going back 2 years, sat down with one of their accounting people, and she was taking numbers from their accounting system, writing them out to send up to our accounting department, where they in turn would be entered into our system, which is to say that we had a different numbering system than they had.
That's when they started the chart of accounts, the new chart of accounts.
Yeah.
I don't know what the timing was in terms of the chart of accounts, but nonetheless, they had a different system than we had. And yet they're an important part of the town, obviously. They're certainly an important part of the town from an accounting standpoint. And and these accounts were supposed to be linked. In other words, if you had number 1 here, and we had a number 2, the number 1 would translate by a computer to number 2. But apparently that wasn't being done at the time. So my question is, with all this as a preamble, and I apologize for being so lengthy, has that type of problem been resolved?
The town hired an accountant / advisor, I guess, for the new chart of accounts. The chart of accounts has been implemented. And what you're referring to, the chart of accounts, is from the UMass accounting system. So all those are in effect right now. We have been using that for the past fiscal year.
So if it's number 1 over there,
Yeah.
and we're number 2, it gets
Well, it's like
seamlessly, it becomes.
it's a number of digits. It's quite lengthy in detail the way it's set up. And yes, that is what should be occurring. Our problem with that was when the new chart of accounts was implemented, the links to the past disappeared. So it's more or less of a reporting issue. This year may be great, but if you go back and ask me to do a report for last year, I'm not going to be able to do it for you with any confidence. So yes, they have been renumbered, and this should work for this fiscal year.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Um,
John?
I just wanted to make a comment that, again, kudos to you and your department. You You've been doing your job right along, and I want to personally thank you for stepping up to the plate and helping out in the interim town administrator.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
As far as the year-end audit office was concerned, are there any additional fees, costs, magic invoices that are going to appear? Because we just recently had one appear for some $20,000. So is there anything that's going to come forward?
For the year-end audit?
No, for the mid-year.
We've already been billed for the year.
Correct. The mid-year cost us $9,500, and through the May special town meeting transfers, we had that was part of the transfer going into the audit budget. So
Okay.
that it will not be above what we have in the audit line now.
We're not going to get a reserve fund transfer request or anything else for that?
Not for this one.
Not for this one, okay. I got the message. Next item on here, do we have, how much money are we gonna have at the end of the year free? How much free cash? Do we have a projection?
Too early to tell. It's probably a few weeks off from knowing exactly or having a very good idea. Derek's given you some estimates. Those are just estimates. For my office, I think he reduced my expenses down to zero. I might have a small surplus, but I might not. We're advertising next week for tax title. I think we have 240 accounts. Multiply 240 accounts times $77, and that's just the tax title, the new tax title recordings. We just spent $30,000 on land court fees, and I probably need to spend about $5,000 to $6,000 more, so I'm one of the departments that he's already reduced. So he's taking a good look at what people are looking at in the next several weeks to spend, but I don't know if we have everything in that.
Okay. I'd like to fall back on one on the expenditure side, though, and it has to do with the MIS again, with the IS. Maybe
One of the things that John Planning had gotten into was this information technology upgrade. And I'm wondering if you have a handle on where we are, what we're potentially overexpended, and how we're going to handle it.
Where we are, we have, I don't know what you call it, I guess it's a tower, sitting in the IT department. There's been no upgrades to the departments. I'm still operating off the same 10-year-old computer I've had since I've been in that office. That's an ongoing issue. I'm not sure where we stand. There are outstanding bills. The $49,000 bill is directly related to that purchase of that computer equipment. And also the software for the next 2 years. Is it purchased over the next 2 years?
Correct. 2 years going on from here. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years, $120,000.
Right. So that you would see when we saw the increase in the MIS information management budget on the expenses, the $60,000 increase represents that. You would also see that another $60,000 would be in FY14 as well.
I believe the original intent of that was to upgrade all of the departments, every computer townwide. I guess the police is all set, but the rest of us are still operating off of old computers, and nothing has been implemented as far as that goes.
When we originally started down this road, was to have be able to put into each office, if you will, more of a dumb terminal doing its computer power at the central area. And without flogging a dead horse, other than your predecessor was quite determined that he had the process under control. Is there an end plan here that we're going to be able to implement this? To have something sitting in the town hall and not having to go any further and be looking at some $60,000 to $120,000 worth of software issues in the out years, borders on the ludicrous.
That is left in the hands of one person right now as far as implementing this. The implementation of this, of these dumb terminals, we own the terminals, I guess. We own whatever these little boxes are that they place on the desk and they link back to this tower that's sitting in his office. That's up to Matt Underhill to install each one of those. From what I understand, there's no installation included in that.
No.
That's not what I say, I'm sorry. Installation, I'm sorry. I'm getting a little tired as we go on here, so.
Mrs. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if this is appropriate or not, but I have been advised that this whole situation is under a formal investigation.
That's not appropriate for this forum, I think. Okay, it's really,
Well, how can you say we're gonna have it or we're not gonna have it if they're investigating it? I mean, I don't care what's going on with it, I just wanna know, is it under investigation or is it not under investigation? Don't we have that right to know that? Don't the taxpayers have that right to know that?
I feel a picket sign coming on.
Mr. Foster, you're welcome to answer if you wish, otherwise.
I've asked the question and I have not been informed that we are under investigation.
There's your answer. I mean, I don't know, there's a lot.
That doesn't surprise me.
There's no notification.
Okay.
Mr. Janelle, you want to follow up?
I guess I just didn't do the right thing, or I'm not listening. Gotcha.
To the issue, to the issue of that, when we started down this road on the MIS upgrade, he was answering some 200 calls a week, and his ability to handle any other issues was beyond the pale. And for the last couple of years, there was supposedly going to be a part-time position put in there to be able to assist him. Now, obviously, that's not happened, and he's never going to be able to do any further action unless we give him some day-to-day relief, at least from my perspective. Your comment?
That is one of the items that was being turned back. I think there was $25,000 turned back in salaries from IT.
Right.
The person was never hired. I don't believe it's in the fiscal year 2013 budget.
It is not.
And Mr. Underhill is one of the hardest working, overworked people in Town Hall. He is there before I arrive in the morning, and I get there at 7:30 or 7:45, and he's there after 5 when I leave, every day. So I don't know what to tell you. There is no money in the budget to hire somebody at this time. There was money in the budget, $25,000 for an assistant, and Matt has been doing an excellent job for the town of Wareham, and to put this on him, an additional burden, is absolutely, it's not fair to him.
I don't believe that he can handle the additional. My point, he was straight out back then, so now.
Still is. He, besides the computers for all of the town offices, he handles communications, he handles cell phones, he handles day-to-day issues with hardware in the offices. He does a number of things for a number of people. He's outstanding, doesn't complain.
Would it be fair to say that our savings of $25,000 is not necessarily a logical and correct thing to have done?
That's putting Mr. Foster in a very difficult position.
I understand that, Mr. Chairman, but trying to make my point,
I know, but
and I think I've made it.
Sure.
there's, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. There are, in the police station, there is a person with IT training that is a full-time employee who's also been a part of this, and there has been some talk of horse trading of that person's services through there. And I think if we were able to somehow do that, and the chief is a tough negotiator, so I don't think it would be free. But I think that would be one of the few ways that we get Matt some good help, especially during, if it's not permanent, at least while we're trying to get this achieved, which should be a win for the town.
Might I ask, just now before your question, is there a transition schedule been set up at all? I mean, is there, or other departments will be brought on? Is there any kind of scheduling that's been set up for transferring to the new system? No.
I don't know if it's-
Like, no.
I can actually answer that, I think, to a certain degree, because I had the opportunity to review pieces and parts of this. One of the problems is, as long as that server's sitting there and it's not doing anything besides collecting dust, you got a problem. It was a question of the software. They were gonna use what they call a thin client on all these computers. The software that was requested versus the software that was going to be used was one of the issues, and that, I think, is where we're having the log jam right now still. And on top of that, if you looked at the original article that we approved, part of that was the company that was doing it was going to set up, and I'm not sure if it was all of them, but a certain amount of the clients for them to give them a head start on it. And that's not part of what's happening now. So the problem you have is you have a server that there's still an issue about the software, which is what Matt would like to run and what is compatible, what he has, versus what they're suggesting or we're buying. And the other issue is the time to configure the setup for 240 thin clients. So it's probably not gonna get a transition schedule till that first issue, which is the server, is resolved. And that's
Okay.
not, am I correct or am I close to what? Don't look at me like that. That's my answer, huh?
That's okay. Well, yeah, it's obviously gonna be an ongoing issue.
It
I would
is.
suspect it probably will come back up through capital planning again at some point, because it's part of their job to, according to the DOR, to monitor projects as to what their progress are. So maybe we can get our DOR, or not DOR, right?
How about, Mr. Chairman?
Capital planning liaison, or member, et cetera, to advise us as we go along. Mr. Paulson?
This has been, this issue has been with us for some time, a long time. And it seems to me we just can't, from my standpoint at least, just leave it hanging out there. We have to get some sort of, if not a definitive answer, at least try to get a definitive answer. How long is it going to take to do something on some sort of schedule?
As I said, we have a member of our committee who sits on capital planning. Capital planning is part of their function, is supposed to be to watch the progress of the various capital projects. We ask them to go back and go through the project and find out what's happening. That's about the limit of our power, Dick. We're advisory again, and, we've been told about it more than once.
Wait a second here. With all due respect, we are the finance committee. We are supposed to be able to with some degree of certainty, and I'm not asking for absolutes, we're supposed to be able, it seems to me, to be able to get a schedule as to when things are going to be done and what the costs might be that are attendant with the completion of those activities as time goes by. And that's my point. That's my question. It seemed to me we're just about to let it go drifting out down the stream. I quite frankly, I find that troublesome.
Any other comments? Other than that, I think we've reached the end of everything. Thank you for your patience.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Should we switch to the Take 2 minutes, 2-minute recess. Change our positions. True.
What's John doing with that lot that's on Sarah?
I'm not sure what he's doing. We're still paying him. No, I didn't have to tell you that. I'm not sure. Right now, we're building houses somewhere else. What? Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I think it's just gonna be.
Seems like a shame to see a lot of
I'm not sure.
trying to put something up.
That type of house is not a market right now. The market's.
Yeah, we're doing quite a bit. Getting ready to do our start and everything, Dick.
That house, no. There's a lot of factors.
Next item on the agenda is committee business, applications and interviews for open member positions. My understanding is they have received a new application for membership on the committee. Madam Moderator, did you receive that?
I did, thank you.
Because I didn't receive a copy.
You did?
No, ma'am.
Oh, I'll forward it to you then. I got it maybe this morning, I've not been home today.
Oh,
I
okay.
saw it on my phone, I haven't been home, but I certainly will forward it to you.
Okay. Are we referring to the same one?
Get up there.
Well,
We decided to get farther away from here.
Good. Works for me.
Smile at the camera.
Any more application?
applications go to the moderator, so she usually sends a copy out.
Boy, you're just up tonight, aren't you?
And what?
Fun.
I emailed my formal request, I got yelled at.
You emailed your phone?
By
Okay.
Janet, she yelled at me.
All right, Tom, did you send your phone? Did you send a request for?
Of course not. Did you think he was going?
It was, I didn't receive it.
All right, I'll do it tomorrow.
I haven't been home, I just,
Alex should be here.
Who's left?
who's talking?
I don't know. Maybe he didn't know to come.
All right. I have to check mine when I get home. We have an application from Marilyn Donahue. I received another email from her, not the formal application, but she's applied to rejoin the committee. We settled the issue of open members next week, last week. We wanted to come in for an interview. We feel that we should interview her?
I never interviewed her before.
All right, well,
She's
she
interviewed
should
me.
show up then. All right, I'll ask her to come in next week. And then we're scheduled for the following
14th,
day, the 14th. What time?
Thursday, 6:30.
6:30 will be the meeting of the appointing authority, at which time there probably also will be, there may or may not be an additional interview by that body, and then we'll appoint a member. And next week I'll be looking for your recommendation as to who we would like to have, who you'd like me to vote for.
How many applications have we received?
We have 2 renewals, all right? And then we have Mrs. Donahue's, and we have Mrs. McCarthy, and Ms. McCarthy's. And that's it. I contacted those that were still open, all right, and none of the individuals responded positively that they wanted to return. I don't know that anybody has withdrawn their applications.
What seats are we talking about?
We're talking about your seat, Dom's
Dominic
seat,
and
and
Mr. Paulson.
Mr. Paulson's seat.
Okay,
Mr. Paulson's seat will be the only open seat if we
that's all.
renew yours.
Okay.
Dom
Since we have
Price
2
is-
applicants,
Don't feel like.
other than the 2 of you. Comments like that, okay. I have it down.
I'll send my thing tomorrow.
Next Tuesday, the school committee chairman and the superintendent are meeting with the Board of Selectmen to discuss the ballot questions on their Tuesday evening meeting. The school committee is posting a meeting. It's not a joint meeting. They're posting a meeting in case they wind up with a majority I was contemplating also posting a meeting for us in case 5 of us show up.
Yes.
So I will post it. It's Tuesday night,
Tuesday evening.
What,
Tuesday
7
evening.
p.m.?
Pardon?
What time?
7 p.m.
At 7 p.m.
At the middle school?
I'll post us at, should I post us at 6:50, I guess then? All right, I will check to see where the meeting is. I would imagine it would be in their normal room, but I think there's a possibility there might be a crowd
It's
there.
this Tuesday, right?
This coming Tuesday.
What, the meeting?
Well,
The meeting's the Board of Selectmen.
I know, but if it gets to be too many people, then it winds up getting moved. I don't know
Yes.
if Mr. Holmes will try for his normal place or if he'll move it. I know, well, in like the sewer situation, they're planning a meeting with a whole bunch of public there. They're gonna move that to the junior high school, so let me find out. I'll post it appropriately. Just, I guess what I'm saying to you is please check in case he does make a decision based on any intelligence he has as to how many people might be attending. The other item was capital planning representative, who's always for 1 year. We'll leave that to be appointed once we have a new chairman. But I'm not sure if you're still interested in renewing Mr. Trudell, or?
I think that after 5 years that I've gone as far as I can go with that. We've educated the population of what's going on. Either we're gonna find some money or have to find some new financing. I think it's time for me to step back and see if there's somebody else who could lend their expertise from the finance committee and come down there and help move it forward.
All right, so we'll be looking, now that committee happens to meet during the daytime, because they meet with the department heads a great deal. And they've also met with the administration in great detail in a great number of times at that time, because it seems to work best for everyone. So keep that in mind, anyone with any interest, you know.
Makes sense.
You'll know that. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew the position was going to be open. All right. Fiscal year 2013 budget matters, special town meeting impact. I don't think we really had any impacts to speak of. I just wanted to put it out there if anybody wanted to review the meeting or not. If there was any comments that anyone wanted to make on what happened at that meeting.
That's the best town meeting and the fastest one we ever had, since I've been around.
On that note, I'll close the discussion.
Oh, thank you.
There are changes in state aid. There's a number of items that are in front of the legislature right now, but you know, they're coming out of House Ways and Means, and we're hearing about all these senators who seem to endorse it, et cetera, but there's nothing in concrete yet. It does look like there will be monies coming to the schools, and there will be money coming to the town. The numbers sound like they're going to be in the $100,000 range, so I guess what I'm doing is just warning everybody that this is coming up, because it probably will mean adjustments at the fall town meeting to the budget. And of course, we know we have other items that are resulting from, you know, the settlements, the problems with the prior allocations, et cetera. So plan ahead. It's going to be a busy fall town meeting for us, I think, as we dust out the final numbers. There also will be the question whether or not something happens with the debt exclusions and overrides. We'll have to see what happens there. Well, but I want the state aid is new, and there is nothing solid. There is nothing solid.
You know, this is Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
It's a pretty sad reflection on the legislature. You know, originally they were supposed to have this kind of stuff out in the fall so the towns could put their budgets together. And then it was the spring. Here we are into June. It really places a difficulty that I don't think the general public sees on trying to put together budgets.
I would agree. And, you know, the other thing too, so one of the pieces of legislation that's out there is to modify the CPC in a couple of different ways. And one piece of it is to take the state aid that was going to towns, reduce it by $25 million, give it to the CPC, and then divvy up the monies. So it's like money that we were receiving to run out the town are not going to be taken out to replace the lack of real estate deeds or fees that are coming in because no land is selling, and put it into the CPC. All right. However, the CPC is also being potentially modified to where playgrounds and stuff could be fixed, et cetera. So try to stay on top of it if you can. Keep your eyes open to the newspaper, et cetera. There's bound to be more coming out, and as I hear more, we see more in the bulletins, so I'll try to make sure everybody gets a copy of what's going on. Because I think a lot of it's going to have impacts in the fall town meeting. As people become increasingly interested in what's happening with the state aid. School department status, I do know that I don't have any numbers, but I do know that layoff slips have started to go out.
25 have gone out so far.
25 have gone out so far. And I do know, as I said before, that they're going to try to go talk to the selectmen about going to the ballot for debt exclusion and override. Which, remember, the selectmen are not obligated to do.
Oh, what?
They are not obligated to go to the ballot.
Well, I have a
So,
question on
and
that.
there really has not been any further discussions as to exactly what is happening. Yes?
Debt exclusion, override, two different things.
Yes.
It takes how many selectmen for the debt exclusion to get on the ballot, and how many
Debt
for the
exclusion is
override?
4,
Okay, it's a super majority.
right, and override is 3.
Okay, well, that absolutely doesn't make sense, but thank you anyway.
Welcome to Massachusetts.
Yeah. Just gets better every day.
Welcome to Massachusetts. Other budget line items, I'm not sure why I put that on there, so I'm just gonna say we've covered it, all right? Capital plan. Oh, David, where's my capital plan?
It's right where the money is.
Okay, very good. You know,
Can I make a comment?
yes, would you please, because we're gonna be in some serious trouble pretty quick.
For 5 years, we've tried to educate the public to the continuing deterioration of our buildings, our rolling stock. And I think we've done a reasonable job doing that. But there's a couple things that want to stick in your craw. One of them is the ambulance. When we started down that road, the head of the EMS insisted that it could only be a new ambulance. And after dithering for a year, you know, we felt that rebuilding was an option. We still haven't gotten any further on this. I know that the previous town administrator was looking to try and induce a major business to contribute an ambulance to the town. That hasn't happened so far, but in the meantime, we continue down this road of deteriorating ambulances. If we can't afford an ambulance, we can't afford anything. And if we turn around as a community and say, well, we're gonna make this very friendly for businesses to come to town because of that, that's where our growth is. And then we try and break their fingers to get them to contribute to things like an ambulance or some other thing that we need. So when I hear the one side telling me how we want businesses to think we're a business-friendly climate, and we're trying to get an ambulance, and we can't fund one or lay aside enough money year by year out of a department that produces a surplus. If you don't think this is discouraging, Larry.
Okay.
Mr. McDonald?
Got your gavel ready? I want to give you a little irony. We can't get an ambulance, everybody's been trying to get one. It's my understanding that we just were gifted the town, the police department, to,
I can
okay,
confirm that.
I cannot confirm it,
I
but,
tried to confirm it, it cannot be confirmed.
alright. So, you know, I think it's a priority thing with us in this town. There are other issues too. You're right. We don't pay it forward, we don't take care of the areas that we need to take care of, and yet, here we are.
Enough said. Well, so much for capital planning and the discouragement of being there.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman, as I have learned over the last few years, and with the ambulance situation, we had a lot of general questions and everything, and there's not a harder working fellow that runs that department than Dave Evans.
Not arguing the point.
What?
I'm not arguing the point.
No, and it's just, and as Dave says, you know, it's just plain common sense that we need to have an ambulance, but we're not getting anywhere, and I'm sure that's why you're stepping down. I'm sure. I mean, you can only keep bouncing against the wall for so long, and you just say, I'm done. Is there something that the FinCom can do as an advisory board to help facilitate anything? I guess that's just a question of mine, because I've seen that department go out and get their own snowplow because the town doesn't even plow them out to save money. Those folks seem to be doing, and they make money. They make money. That doesn't make any sense to me either.
My wife would tell you that she sees ambulances go in and out of local place. And the ambulances in town are very, very busy. For the sake of this $180,000 to $220,000, I put it in the same category as the $25,000 we're saving by not having an info technology specialist trying to put terminals into offices. We've made so many false savings.
This is life or death.
We're eating our own lunch, and there seems to be no long-range plan.
Is there anything that we can do with my question, Mr. Chairman?
What you can do and what we're actually probably legally supposed to be able to do are usually two different things. That's what's happening here. There is a requirement in the town charter that a capital plan, a 5-year capital plan in great detail, be prepared by the end of December by the town administrator. Question will be, will we have a town administrator? By that point, I surely hope that we would. But also will come the question of how much emphasis the Board of Selectmen will put on that. We've talked about the ambulance, but we're also ignoring the fact we went to this last town meeting in the spring. We approved the lease payment on 8 cruisers and an SUV, which are each in the end of their 3rd year, will become ours, yes. You have to ask how much longer they're going to last. There's 9 cruisers right there, plus we put no cruisers into service this year by either lease or by purchase. So we're back with a situation we were in like 3 or 4 years ago, where we're replacing nothing. And it's going to hit us just like one of the items that's on here next, which is the school buses. All of a sudden, we're going to have well, maybe we could, since the school buses are holding up somewhat, we can use them to transport prisoners or something. I don't know. I mean, we are on, I get tired of saying, we're headed down the track at 5,000 miles an hour off a cliff. And we just can't seem to get anybody to pay attention to it. And when we've come back and we've made the request, we did make a request for a capital plan that would give us far more detail from the administration, and it was just, no.
How do we make it public? Because that's where
We make it public, one of the things we're making it public by talking about it right now, because we do have an opportunity to show, the tapes, etc. So that helps, but how do we make it public? I'm not sure. Maybe we need a PR person that goes and starts saying in October or November that we will be looking for that plan to be ready for the town. There's also a requirement in January, all right, for the town accountant to do certain reports that have not been done, that are very, very critical as to what's happening over the next 6 months, etc. All right, those again were sort of shuffled aside. I don't want to get into a tussle. I know I wouldn't want to get into a tussle with any other boards or anything, but I think I also agree with Dick when he says, you got to speak up. I mean, he's right. The problem is how we have not really taken the course of saying that we'll go down the path that others have. We have to find a way to do it and be effective with it. I don't have the answer to it right now. The ability to do it is in the charter. It's in the charter. We just have to enforce it. But how we can enforce it as an advisory body is the difficult portion. Let's have Don, give Don a chance. Go ahead, Don.
Through you to Dave. Dave, you said the administrator was trying to, the shakedown approach on the ambulances. Do you believe?
use shakedown.
Well, all right.
That's your terminology.
All right, my terminology. I'll use it, the shakedown. Do you believe that that's the wrong approach? Or do you believe that that approach can be accomplished?
First of all, I can't resolve the rhetoric that we want this to be a business-friendly community and then do everything that every other community is doing in the state because we say, oh, every other community is doing that. So if I wanted to come to Wareham and I was a large corporation and somebody was going to use your word, shakedown, unless there were really compelling reasons for me to come to Wareham, I could go anywhere and get the same results.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe Walmart wants to move.
So my point to you is,
I wouldn't let him move. I mean, I wouldn't let you move. Period, the end, I don't care.
Let him finish, please.
so when you ask me if I think that that's wrong, I do.
Okay.
But on the other hand, given where we are, how far we've gone forward, we need a lot of help in this area. But would you really, if you were a big corporation?
Walmart's already here.
Absolutely.
Walmart's here, they want to stay.
Yeah.
They want to move over near the crossing.
May I comment?
No, I'm not even going.
Yeah, I would in a heartbeat. Maybe it's just me, but I would.
Mr. Jordan, please.
But for my last comment on this particular thing, I watched Pittsfield trying to shake down a mall. And the mall said, yeah, okay, we'll be back. And they went to the next town called Lanesboro that didn't have any zoning things. They walked in one day, dropped the plan on the desk.
That was it.
And Pittsfield didn't get their mall, but exactly 1 inch over the line, Lanesboro got it. Now, was it wrong? Was it right? Well, there was a company putting in a mall in that represented millions of dollars worth of taxes. Then in the short-sighted, they didn't get it.
Shame on the town for letting them in.
They didn't have zoning to stop it.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. I understand how you feel. That's okay.
All right, Mrs. Brown, here.
No, I don't have anything.
Mr. Gray.
I just have to comment that I'm afraid there are some ethical questions that I think should be discussed at some point. And I have a problem with living in a town that's using shakedowns, and that's the right
Well,
word.
we don't really know.
Well,
That's,
excuse
let's
me.
say, if nothing has occurred, then it occurred, you know, and nothing has
Fine,
occurred.
but what we're talking about is doing that, quite frankly, the possibility of doing that. And I just think it's ethically absolutely wrong. And I don't think, as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't be involved in it, period.
That's as bad as cheating on an ethics test.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Mrs. Couturier.
I'm gonna be a little kinder than the rest
This
of
chicken's
you.
getting tired.
And I'm not gonna call it shaking down, breaking down, or otherwise. But I think I understand Dave's point of, businesses know, these corporations know that, the cities and towns are poor at this point. However, it doesn't give us the best base to welcome them into a town and then approach them with our hand out saying, could you pretty please, okay?
Okay.
The point is that we need a 5-year plan.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we need a plan of action on how to pay for it. This can't just be keep being a pipe dream. We're building these pipe dreams and saying, this is what we need. We have absolutely no idea how we're ever going to pay for it. All right? And until we get a real town administrator with a real plan of action, I think we're just beating our head up against the wall.
Okay, if we can wrap it up, Mr.
I will wrap this up. I think this goes back to one of my original points before. There is no policy in place that says you have to put so much aside for capital every year. And the people that could
Yes,
do
there
that.
is.
Yes, there is.
Okay, there's no enforcement of the policy.
No, there isn't.
But, well, sorry, I'm shaking down the selectmen, right? But the selectmen are the ones that need to enforce that. If we are, again, an advisory committee, but our selectmen are the people that can enforce the policy. We can put aside money for capital. We can recognize the problem. They're the ones that are going to have to do it. So I guess from our standpoint, we can advise them or strongly advise them, and we could get other public people to advise them, because seriously, the further we put it out, the more it's going to cost us, and the bigger the repairs, the bigger the issues. So,
But the well is dry.
no, the well's not dry.
Okay.
The well's not dry. The problem is, it's obviously we have money because we continue to operate. It's a question of how we operate and how you want to put the money. And if you're short-sighted enough to believe that this is what we need and we can't think of anything else in the future, well, when that future does hit, we're not going to have buildings. We're not going to have anything, and we're not going to have any more income because people are going to keep moving out. So somewhere along the line, if there's a policy, it's in the charter, is what you're saying.
There is policy.
Yes.
Then that's where our focus should be, is on the selectmen and putting it in action. Policies is a big thing in this town. We don't always, either we don't have a policy or it's not being enforced. We need to put pressure on the executive branch, which establishes policies and enforces policies.
And I would end that with a brief statement that each and every selectman has an email we could detail, and if they're all emailing them on a regular basis, we're gonna bring it to their attention. We're gonna bring it to their attention.
You need to do that as a committee, though.
No, I don't think so. I think we need to inundate, Peter Titlebaum himself said, nobody's bringing any issues to me or anything. I mean, I don't know about the other selectmen. Bring it to them, bring it to them, and in their participation part, just
Yeah.
ask if they got your email, and if they put any thought into it.
My comment on this would honestly be, we're advisory to the town meeting. However, we do not have to look at the town meeting being solely the nights that the body gets together and convenes. All right, we can't go to the public and ask them why we are not asking the executive branch to consider these items. This is when we go back to, like I said, something with the PR or something where we say, hey, we're recognizing these things. We're asking you as the citizens, as the decision makers, as the legislators of this town, right, to advise the executive what you would like to see done. And that's what's not happening right now, all right? And again, our best forum is to the town voters. That's where the charter puts our power. I think where we might fall a little remiss is to rely on the town meeting to do that. That goes back to what I did put other budget line items on here. And that's going back to what Dick talks about quite a bit, as far as the healthcare is concerned, as far as the obligation for retiring employees, the pension, et cetera. There are things that need to be done. John mentioned tonight there should be at least a trust that's set up, et cetera. We tend to focus ourselves on the two town meetings, and we sort of rest and relax the rest of the time. And that's really when those issues should be at the top of our agenda. We should be talking about those. Those are the long-term items that we could deal with over the summer months, or maybe, before the budget hits us in January, et cetera. Trying to do them at the same time is near impossible, And I think in the 2 years I know that I've been on there, I've been as comfortable as everybody with just letting it fall through the cracks. So we may want to think about what we want to do over the summer. Maybe we should address a couple of these major issues and make our recommendations and bring it to everyone's attention, all right, rather than taking the summer off. I surely do not love that idea. I like a vacation like everyone else, all right, but that may be what we have to do. Give it some thought,
You need to work hard.
all right? And, okay? No, Dick, you did not fall on deaf ears. It was just a matter of trying to find the time. Okay? And also trying to find the emphasis.
I'll get an email off to Jim Gabberty asking to put these two particular issues on to the next capital planning meeting, MIS and the inputs.
Okay? The last item I had in committee matters was the action committee on the school buses. It's like non-existent. I don't know what's happening.
Weren't they the ones that were supposed to have that ready by Springtown meeting?
Yes, there's supposed to be a plan on how to replace the buses, et cetera. Nothing has happened. I think they're gonna try to restart it. Mr. Trudell, please. I think they're gonna try, but again, we're hearing nothing. The next thing we'll hear probably will be next Tuesday night, where they will come back looking to get the 5 buses. Or 4 buses that they put the debt exclusion in for. But that's not the solution to the problem. That's a Band-Aid, and we're still not hearing any solution. I would hope that our liaison, all right, would emphasize to the school committee and school superintendent that we're a little dissatisfied with the fact that there is no plan. Liaison reports, water pollution control. Yes.
Actually, last conversation I had with Guy Campina, now that the special town meeting's over, I asked him maybe we could sit down with the town accountant or someone and see what information he could get, and then we could work towards getting him the sheets he wants. I can build an Excel spreadsheet, if that's what we need to do, but it seems to me with this very expensive and awesome Vadar system, we ought to be able to run some kind of report that gives him what he needs, but if we can't, then we'll go back to 1985 and build an Excel spreadsheet.
I agree with you.
That's what he needs.
I wish Guy had informed me.
I could box a green column pad if that's necessary.
Guy will be shortly in touch with my understanding is some interns are going to be asked to be made available to Mr. Campino to help him as well.
Cool.
All right. I have already met with him at least once to discuss what you're talking about as to having a model built, saying that, well, I sort of represented the committee without telling the committee, saying that we have talent on the committee that's more than willing to work with him and to help him put stuff together so that he could get management reports that he could deal with. All right, not that the interns or somebody else could deal with, but that he could deal with.
Right.
That's supposed to further, I guess next week, we're gonna try to meet with a couple of interns. One of the selectmen is helping us on that, and we'll I definitely will be calling on you to help us put the model together. He's very anxious to do it, and one of the things I identified the same thing to him is that the next step that I saw that we could help him with would be to identify what information is available to him through the Vadar system.
There's no sense in
Because he doesn't know right now, and we have to find that out. We've got to let the town accountant get his feet wet.
Right.
Okay? School committee, Sam?
Oh, I have nothing on that.
Have nothing? Capital planning, I think we beat that to death.
Thank you.
The library?
It's still there. Actually, they're closing, they're doing a switch over to spinning over to the library system now, so they're going to be closed for a little while. I did not attend the last meeting, but I have a secret society member on there. And no, I haven't. There's a member on there that I'm very familiar with, and they're looking for members. They have a shortage in there, and I believe they have a couple going off. And I still think there's some issues with the capital needs for the library that are fairly serious. So.
Mr. Jim?
Shirley May?
Has the,
I thought you were going to say take a number.
has the chairman of the board of trustees and the library director come to a agreement of what their capital needs are going to be?
No, I don't think so. But I have another one that's very interesting.
Well, second question to follow through on that is, what's the status maintenance that the maintenance department is trying to help them out with in terms of windows, the doors, some areas that need to be painted? Have they made any progress in that area?
I'll look into that one. I don't have an answer to that one. The other thing is they had a meeting last week and they brought in someone from the state, the NLBC, I believe it is, to talk to them about their committee, what their committee was about, everything. And one that I thought was a very interesting point is the one that I kind of emphasized when I came on here, you guys were emphasizing to me, is that she, whichever it was, explained to them that as a committee they could argue, shout, scream, whatever they want, but when they left there, they should also, the committee should speak with one voice, which I thought was kind of interesting coming from another area as well, because that's always been kind of the crew of this board. So
The crew.
this crew board.
Why is the spinny closing?
So they can do the switch over on the computer systems, and they have some other things they need to switch over as well. So
Oh,
it
the
can
sales network.
Right.
Will a book withdrawal of spending be reflected in the main library?
I don't know, but that's something we probably need to, I mean, if we're that interested in it, I can certainly find out.
I was just curious.
That's the whole point of it, is moving it to the cell system, so it's part of it. And I'm sure.
I heard tonight we have an overworked and overtaxed MIS department,
Mhm.
and they're gonna do the spinning.
Are they doing the spinning?
They're gonna do the spinning?
I don't
Who's
know.
doing the spinning? Is it Matt?
I don't think Matt does sales. The sales.
He doesn't do sales, but what about their internet and all that other kinds of stuff? Are they connected to the town server?
I don't know that either.
We need to find that out from.
Wow, I got a lot of questions to find out. You
I
think
know.
I'd
And
be
then
a
the
better
question is,
liaison, huh?
and one of the other things is, well, you know, what are Mr. Underhill's priorities?
Just a low profile.
I should have just shut up and let that one go past me. I'll look into it.
Mr. Cattouli, you seem to be waving over there.
I'm not.
Okay. Any other liaison reports?
I just have one comment. I'm not sure whether or not it's appropriate or not. On the inspectional services on the building, why do we have someone in place that's working for us? I guess it was, we can't automatically rehire someone. We have to put it out to bid when the contract is up. Is that the way it works?
Who are you referring to?
You can't use the name.
A building inspector. We have the building inspector. Have a building inspector in place now. I guess he had a temporary contract, and now it's up for bid.
He's independent. He was an independent contractor. That's what it was, Tom. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, which would also mean that each time that it lapsed, unless it had a renewing
Yeah. clause,
it would have to go to bid.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
That's just a mandatory law. That's how it works.
Well,
He
unless it
can't be
has,
rehired if we're satisfied with him. It has to go up to
it
bid.
would have to go to bid if it didn't have a renewal clause.
Answer my
and the renewal
question.
clause would be specific as to how it could be
Okay.
exercised. And I don't know if renewal is allowable under state law. We could find out. But any contract works that way unless you have a renewable.
Okay, so we just can't rehire someone if we're satisfied with them because their term ends.
No, but you have the highest, I mean,
Has to go up to
you'd
bid.
be the
Okay.
top of the in Canada or whatever. And I think the bidding, is the town, I'm not sure, I don't think the town is on strictly low bid either though. I think we're in the bidding system that allows you to also look at the value of what you're getting, but I'll try to confirm that.
Obviously, we are, from what we've done in the past. Oh, jeez.
Thank you, Karen. No editorial comments. Now you've done well all night long.
I know.
Now get that last little shot.
No, that was
Touching on that comment, what did Mr. Kudish cost us anyway?
less than what was advertised.
About 88,000, I believe, was the final number.
Just
right?
curious.
It was advertised at like 91, but he accepted it for 88. Okay.
Do you want my report?
Yes, I always like your report.
Just to let you guys know that, I told you that,
if there was a woman who could move mountains, it would be Susan Ricky. So she hasn't given up on your parking program, okay? CEC has got the funds to pay for it, okay? And she's been in contact with legal on the procedure to go about this. I think, she's trying to get this accomplished before the summer. I'm not sure that that's really gonna happen, but it hasn't been forgotten. Hopefully it'll be, step one can get done, and then, if it turns out that we can make a little more money and by the second phase, et cetera, CEC is gonna try to do that.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
It sounds good, and I haven't talked to her a few times. If anybody gets it done, it's gonna be her.
Should have promoted
It will be her. Any new business?
Oh, I got so much, but I'm just not gonna say.
Thank you.
Well, come on, just one. Speaking of Susan Ricky, I saw her Saturday and Sunday, but several people in town, there was a triathlon this weekend, several people in town were out there volunteering, and it was really great, the people that were out there volunteering. They were absolutely max performance. Tim Richmond said he was so pleased with the number of volunteers that came out from the town and helped out with that. And I just think that was really good.
And congratulations there.
Yeah.
Yes. Congratulations.
In the rain.
We'll see. Yeah, that was not easy, but next year it'll be a lot more fun.
Anything else? Any new business? I will give you one item out of my week away from Wareham, and that is the increasing number of bicycles that are appearing in various municipalities, etc., not necessarily privately owned, but either by companies who are renting the bikes, or in some cases, I guess Manhattan and Brooklyn are about to receive several $1 million worth of bikes, all right, from Citibank and MasterCharge. Most of the places I went to are also, again, they were sort of like tourist stuff, had paths marked, and then we have a bike committee doing stuff, etc. If you bump into somebody who might be a good prospect to put that kind of thing in our town, maybe a little chit chat with them will work. I mean, it's becoming extremely popular.
Need some bike paths in this town first.
Yeah.
Right, but as a mode of transportation, especially if you start to think about us in the summertime, it would be a great way to do it. And besides, Larry told me he can't afford the bike he wants, so that should be the type of bike that we should rent.
Trying to lower my standards.
There's no-
for the next one.
I'm sorry, Donovan.
These programs like Boston have been extremely successful with their bike plus
Yes.
program, and I believe Cambridge is looking at one now too. It's so much easier to put something in place in the city. It benefits the city so much more as far as the decrease in the traffic, and the decrease in the frustration to get around.
Yes.
I mean, the bike paths would be, ours are going to be purely recreational. How many folks have that luxury or opportunity to even ride to work?
I'm looking at ours, and the reason why I bring it up too is, let's not forget, our summer crowd is very compact.
Oh,
In the general Onset area, all right, and you get from Onset to the canal is not that great a distance, all right, and the canal is some 7 miles one way. So you're probably looking at a good 25 to 30 mile ride that people could easily take out of that area.
Absolutely.
All right, it could be a great business to draw to town. It could be an asset to the town as well, because there are people who take vacations based on the ability to do that type of thing.
I agree.
So just as, like I said, if you bump into somebody, this is not a major program.
No?
Dick, you were gonna.
You're not getting a bike over that bridge right at the moment between Onset and the canal.
No, but there is a bike, there's an access road along that starts in Bourne Center, right? And you can go 7 miles without crossing the bridge.
All the way down the Cape and
All the way
back.
down
I've done it a few times.
People ride that every single day. They also,
Shake them down for $2 for an ambulance too.
Right now.
oh, no, because of the bridge.
Yeah.
You go shaking people.
Such little things. Dick?
Two things, and we have a selectman here, so just a thought here. But it pertains to the bike, first of all. Why don't we have a bylaw or a procedure in place that all retailers would have bike racks?
That would be good.
We don't have the town hall.
Schools, too. They used to have it in the
Right.
60s.
No?
I mean, it shouldn't be that hard. We can twist Walmart's arm perhaps and make it like.
There we go, there's shakedown.
There is one right now between Walmart and Stop and Shop.
The other,
Your second point?
my second point comes back to the, what you and I emailed back and forth on, but maybe nobody else picked up on it. The memo of understanding, the $100, the understanding on the last line of the memo of understanding with the union today, that the copay would be paid back to them. I saw that.
Mhm.
So we're gonna go from $5 to $15, and the copays are gonna be paid back. That just defeats the purpose. Why not put the copay at $500? That would sound terrific, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe pay it back.
There's just a little bit of history here. The Rand Corporation, a name that may or may not be familiar to any of you. Yeah, they're a think tank. About 25 years ago, they did a study where they took a group of people that had the same characteristics, and they broke them up into two distinct groups, each having the same characteristics. Age, some were older, some were younger, but same blood pressure, same ethnicity. And with one group, they gave to them free health care, no copay, no deductible. The other group that has the same characteristics had the same characteristics. They had to pay for the health care, and they had to pay copays and deductibles. And then the Rand Corporation sat back and waited to see what would happen. You can guess what happened. The people that had the free health care used it 25% more of the time.
Absolutely,
Well, I could have told you that.
yeah.
But that's my point. We're giving, through our contracts, we're giving away the copay. That to me is foolishness. That is bad management. You wouldn't do that in industry.
No.
And very few towns are doing it. There are a couple that I understand are doing it, and we're maybe the third. And I would strongly suggest that policy be changed, because the employee is gonna say, well, I can go pay the 15 and I'll get the 15 back. Let them move it to 25, I don't care. I'll get the 25 back. And I'll use the health care all I want. And we've got a $5-6 million bill for health care in this town. If you could reduce it by, I'm not saying it's gonna be reduced by 20 or 25%, but if it's free, people are gonna use it. I'm not saying abuse it, I'm saying use it.
And I understand what you're saying. What's happened on those contracts so far, it's like I told you, it's an insurance company ploy, right, they don't want to insure people 100% with no copay. So they changed the way they set their premium rates, and I understand with you, what you were saying, they always look at experience, et cetera. And, you know, they don't care if the town reimburses or not, they put a different rate in there. So that's part of the reason, but once the copay is in there, yeah, going forward, I think we would be negotiating that rather than reimbursing, all right, that the employee be responsible for the copay, because businesses did the same thing for a long time. They had the copay, they reimbursed it, they paid 100% of the health care, but when it became unaffordable, they bowed out of it gracefully, and one of the ways to gracefully bow out was the copay system. So I could agree with that one for definite. The other issue that's going to come up, and I probably won't be able to drive safely down the street, this is new business. I talk about this quite a bit in the town. I've talked about it on this committee. I'm going to bring it up under this new business unexpected. And that is, a few weeks ago, the state Supreme Court said the towns were no longer obligated to pay the state's portion of the Quinn bill. We are paying it on a weekly basis.
Yep.
Right? And nobody wants to say anything, talk about it. Nobody wants to do anything about it. I understand the problem for the people that are employed for the town who benefited from it. All right, but right now what's happening is there's at least $160,000 that we're paying out. The citizens are paying out. All right, that technically under the law they are not obligated to do. It's an issue that has to be addressed. It has to be addressed quickly. And there has to be an understanding between the union, there has to be the administration and the town. But right now, we are basically ignoring the ruling of the court, which we can do, but it's costing us a lot of money to do it.
Question, how do we move that toward action? Because here again, it's not our job to do to carry that out.
As
But
a
I
budget item,
agree
I think,
it
as a
has-
budget item, I think it is part of our job, because we're paying something we shouldn't be paying.
Oh, I
When
totally.
we put a budget together, we come back and we tell everybody we have to pay this because it's mandated. Well, now we have something that's not mandated, right? That was
That's in the
mandated one
budget.
time, and we're still paying it.
But that.
And we're not, and people are, it's not being brought up that this item is no longer mandated, so the public's not informed.
But that's not our decision. That's.
Yeah, it is.
What's
Yes,
not,
it is.
it is, it's our
Well,
decision.
No, it's not. We go into these meetings, we make recommendations. If we don't like a number on them, we say that, but it's really not our decision.
I guess,
As far as what?
I mean, it's our decision to advise that they shouldn't pay it, but that really comes down to the Board of Selectmen.
I understand, but it's our decision to advise,
Still
not to
budget.
pay it.
Yeah, we could
It's in the
advise
budget,
them,
and
and
we
we could
can
cut their
say-
budget by $160,000,
Yeah.
and say why.
That would be like saying if we suddenly found out that we were paying double on the town's trash removal, all right, and we really didn't have to pay double, we could pay the half without even going out to bid,
We should advise.
say nothing?
No, I'm not saying we
Of course you
should.
come back and say something,
Town
Sam.
trash removal.
Mr. Chairman, what I was getting at by asking that question
Yes.
was, it is right now, the board that would do something about it would be the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
And I would recommend that we, perhaps that you as chairman might want to write a letter to the Board of Selectmen
On behalf of all of them.
on behalf of the finance committee,
Okay.
bringing that to their attention.
So moved.
Second.
Can I ask a question?
Can we vote on that?
Discussion, Mrs. Cthulhu?
My question would be, the obligation of the Quinn bill, is something that would have to go to collective bargaining, am I correct? I mean,
No, not in this particular case. This is, what happened, the court ruling
I
was
understand that
because of a
part.
collective bargaining agreement between the city of Boston and their police union. The contract for the city of Boston specifically stated that they would pay only the city's portion. When it went to court, the question was, what would the court uphold? The court came back and said, unless your contract specifically said you would cover the state, you do not have to cover it.
Well, that's my question. We just finished negotiations on past contracts, we're up to date, et cetera. What is in the current contracts? Are we contractually obligated to continue to pay those benefits?
The contract, if we had a copy of the contract, you remember, if you go back to look at what we received for, what we're voting for at town meeting, and the Quinn bill is by reference.
By reference?
By reference. In other words, there's nothing that says we will and will not pay anything other than what's in the bill itself.
Okay,
So the wording of the bill is what applies to our town,
okay.
right? What you're referring to is if there was something that said, well, if the state dropped it, we would pay it.
Right.
Yes, you're obligated at that point, but that's not how we're worded.
Okay.
We're just worded as that we adopt, I think the wording is that we're adopting the Quinn bill, or we have adopted the Quinn bill,
Okay.
which means the wording of the Quinn bill is what applies, and that's what the court says. We are no longer obligated to pay that portion of it. Now, it varies by officer, it varies by degree. You know, like I said, you're right, probably most of it would have to go back to some form of negotiation at some point, but something should be happening rather than just, oh,
absolutely
we're gonna let it go,
No, I absolutely agree with you.
right?
And I agree that the public needs to understand that. We can't keep putting something into a budget that says we're paying for this without the public understanding that we are no longer obligated to do so. If they choose, if town meeting chooses to say, oh yeah, we need to continue to do this.
That's up to them.
That's up to them, but we need to make sure they're properly informed and.
This is the key. Now, I'll be safe as you drive home.
Yes.
Do we need to have a vote on that motion?
Yes, we do. We have a-
Yeah, we have a second.
We do have a motion and a second.
I tried to get it out of see?
To send the
Should have
letter.
made a motion to adjourn, I could have.
To send the
All
letter.
right, is there any further discussion of the motion?
Nope.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion to
Second.
adjourn, second.
You're right.
Non-debatable, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are meeting next week. We are meeting next week, reorganization.